Thank you for tuning in. I have something that I want to share, and I believe that it's going to bless everyone that pays attention. Um, I'm only doing this live, and I'm doing this as a live and not doing a videotaping because I believe that is what I'm supposed to do today at this moment. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started again. Thank you for tuning in. The question that I found myself led to answer, I did not, I'm dressed for church, but without my jewelry or whatever, but I actually stayed home and I attempted to watch services. I actually watched two. I started watching the third one and it was like, I need to come off of here. When I watched the first one, I watched Joel Osteen and it was good. And I'm not a Joel Osteen fan. It was good. It was good. I have my notes on what he was talking about. He was talking about the miracles that we receive in the middle of a storm, or like when you're going through a storm. He was talking about when you go through a storm, that you're actually in the middle of a miracle. And it was pretty good. And then while I was watching him, a friend of mine, hold on a second, my voice is cracking. When I was watching him, a friend of mine who is a pastor in Harrisonburg, Virginia, she came online. And oh my gosh, I really enjoyed her. I started listening to her. And I really enjoyed her. She was talking about walking it out, to continue working it out and walking it out. And she did it. She was doing her live from her home, and she had like her exercise equipment. I'm like, look at her. So I really enjoyed that. In the meantime, I was waiting for a pastor here in the city that I live in to do their broadcast so that I could tune in to their broadcast. And it didn't come on, and I ended up associate friend of mine, Facebook friend of mine, their services went online. So I went and tuned in there. And now the entire time it's like, okay, like there was like this jittery or like all over the place kind of feeling. I caught this message and I caught that message and was like, that's good. That's good. And of course I had posted and I was like, you guys post where, what you're listening to or however, because somebody might want to hear it. So I ended up catching this other one and it was the praise and worship. And first I was looking at how many people were in the sanctuary. And I'm like, okay, and I'm listening to it, and one of the songs that they were singing is like, I'm listening to this and I'm like, okay, so wait, what are we fighting? I'm like, what are we fighting? Who are we fighting against? And it started to have me like a little on edge, like who are we fighting against? And the reason why is because prior to today, all last week, it was so clear to me that God said that I'm the one that's doing this. I'm the one that's bringing this storm. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 7. And I have it like right in front of me. God said to Solomon, God had spoke to Solomon, is this verse 13, because we always quote verse 14. If my people were called by my name, we always quote that. And we never quote verse 13. So in verse 13, he said, when I shut up the heavens. No, I'm going to go back to verse 12. It says, the Lord appeared to him at night and said, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a temple for sacrifices. Verse 13. And this is 2 Chronicles chapter 7. Verse 13 says, when I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or command locusts to devour the land. Now catch this. or send a plague among my people. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So it's like God said he's doing this. If he does this, he tells us what to do. So I'm like, okay, who are we fighting? This means war, but who am I fighting against? So I was like, let me pull back from that. So I kind of, I pulled out my Bible and I sat here and I overheard my husband listening to T.D. Jakes. So I had my computer on the side. It's on my desk right now, but I had it on the side where understand where I usually have it at. And I went to pull up T.D. Jakes. I went to go and look for this live broadcast. First of all, it took me a minute to find it. And then when I found it, how everything else played with no problem on my computer, when I found it, tell me why it wasn't playing right. Like it would literally freeze up. He'd be talking now. I hear him from my husband's office and everything is playing like with no problem none whatsoever. But on my computer, all of a sudden it's not playing. And I'm like, what? But at the same time that was happening, I'm starting to look at the scripture and it's like, and I'm starting to write down like, who are we fighting? What are we fighting? Do we even know what we're fighting against? And so family, I couldn't even tell you like how many minutes passed. So family, I just turned that off and I got focused. And again, I sat with that. And the fact that God said that he was the one. He said, again, this is verse 13. When I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or command locusts to devour the land. Now, apparently right now at the same time that we're dealing with this coronavirus stuff, over in like Uganda, Ethiopia, I might have my African city names wrong, but over there, they're dealing with a locust plague. Like you could go Google it and you will see how bad it is. He says, or send a plague among my people. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven. I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. And then I like verse 15 and 16 too, but I'm not going to go there with verse 15 and 16 because what ended up happening was I started remembering again. The Holy Spirit started bringing back to me Jonah again. So I went to the book of Jonah and I'm like, okay, Lord, why you got me with Jonah? What is it that you're trying to show me? And it dawned on me, no, this is what happened. I ended up researching something as it pertained to 2 Chronicles chapter 7. And it took me to Deuteronomy chapter 11. And I was looking through that and then I was looking at verse 12. And in verse 12, in verse 12, it stated something to the effect of how we need to stop doing our own thing. And I'm like, what? And that at that point, I got sent back to Jonah. And I started looking at this. So I'm in the book of Jonah. And I want to show y'all something because I've been speaking this all last week. I spoke it to a couple of people. And I realized, like, when God first last week brought Jonah up to me, I thought I was in trouble. I'm going to be fair. I thought I was in trouble. I thought God was checking me about my attitude towards the people. Because, you know, Jonah had a little attitude when it came to the Ninevites and God turning back from what he was going to do with the Ninevites. And so I thought that was what it was. And I'm like, okay, do I have a kind of like an attitude with the people, with the world? Do I have that? And the very next day, the Holy Spirit rerouted me and showed me, no, it's not about Jonah, but it was about the Ninevites and how they reacted to the warning. So I've been talking to different ones, and I have been saying to them, the president needs to call a fast. He needs to tell, this is what I was saying. The president needs to tell everybody to call on their God and fast. And I got into a little short conversation about that with somebody yesterday. And here I am today again with Jonah. So I want to show y'all something. I want to show y'all this. Starting with Jonah chapter 1, verse 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah. That's what it says. Jonah got a word from the Lord. And let me tell y'all what Jonah did. It says, first of all, God will tell you, when you receive a word from the Lord, he's going to tell you where to go. He's going to tell you what to do. He's going to tell you what to say. He's going to tell you who to go to. He's going to tell you why. He's going to explain that to you. And that's what happened here. Verse 2, this is what Jonah was told. God told Jonah, he says, go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But let me tell y'all what Jonah did. In verse number 3, Jonah ran. He didn't do what God told him to do. He ran. He went the other way. Now, I had to look at this. I had to really look at this. And I'm about to show you something. This is an atlas of the Bible lands. I needed to be able to get a visual of what was going on. And so I was searching all through this book, trying to figure out, okay, how serious is this? First of all, Jonah should have did what God told him to do, but he didn't. And this message is like for all of us, myself included. This is for all of us. When God tells us what to do we do it? And then we get online and on Facebook, and I'm always battle ready. Those who know me, I'm always battle ready, always fight. But we want to fight, and we want to battle, and we want to go to war. But who are we fighting against? Do we really know? Is it something as simple as we need to stop fighting and stop pressing against the gourds and start paying attention and start being obedient? But before we even get to that, I want to show you this again with Jonah. So it says, Jonah ran. God told Jonah what to do. But instead of Jonah doing what God told him to do, instead of him going where God told him to go and saying what God told him to say, he ran. So it said he headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa. So he went to this, wherever he was. I don't know where he started at because it doesn't tell us that part. But he went to Joppa, headed to Tarshish, when he was supposed to head to Nineveh. So I want to show y'all this. This is Bible land. This is Joppa right here. Now, I was searching on I'm telling you, I went through this book. I was combing through this book all this morning. That's why I don't know what time it is, but, okay, it's 1 o'clock. I've been up since 6:30. I literally started listening to the church messages by 9. By, I say, 10:30. By 10:30, I was into digging, and so I've been researching all this. So here's Joppa. I'm combing this, trying to find Tarshish, trying to find Nineveh. I couldn't find it on this one, but I needed you to see where Joppa is. Where Joppa is right there. And take note of the Dead Sea, because this will help you keep up with where Joppa is. Other key points is Gaza, which is right here. If I'm saying the names wrong, forgive me. Gaza is right here. Tyre is up here somewhere. Where's Tyre? Oh, Tyre is right there. Tyre, whatever. It's right there. Gaza is right there. Joppa smack dead in the middle. Keep that in mind, and keep in mind what the Dead Sea is. So I'm searching on here, and here's another one. It shows Joppa right there. This is where Jonah got on the boat, Joppa. He was headed towards Tarshish when he was supposed to be headed towards Nineveh. And I still couldn't find Nineveh. So I'm searching again for Tarshish and for Nineveh. So I get here. Here's a bigger calendar. Map. And here is Joppa. And I found Nineveh this time. Nineveh is way over here. Right there. So the other maps that I showed you only showed this area. Nineveh would have never showed up because it was way out somewhere. Again, here's Joppa. And this is where he got on the boat. And how I know that that's Joppa right there, because I wrote it in, because Gaza is right there. And Tyre is right there. And remember, from the other maps, Joppa was in the middle. So this is where he got on the boat. He was supposed to go way over here. So again, I'm trying to find Tarshish. I'm like, I had to get an even smaller map. And I love how God do that too. Oh my gosh, when it comes to teaching, he'll give us a big picture and zoom us in, or he'll give us a small picture and zoom us out. So here's the map again. Here's Joppa right there. He was supposed to go here to Nineveh, but let me show y'all where Tarshish is. Way over here. This is where he was going. So this here, look at all this water here. This is what he was crossing. Now let me tell you why it's key and important that you know that and understand that and see that. Jonah did his own thing. We like to tend to do our own thing too. We tend to do our own thing too. And like even with this coronavirus thing that's going on, and we try to justify stuff, and we say what the devil did and this, that, the other. Oh, but we don't really know who we fighting against. Jonah was so committed to doing his own thing. He went in a whole different direction. I showed it to you on the map. I don't know where he started, but it says here, Jonah ran away from the Lord, headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa. So he went to Joppa, this point here, to get all the way, because this is where he was going, all the way over here, yet he was supposed to go that way. And he was going across water. As a matter of fact, me saying we not to do our own thing, let me show you this from the scripture. Let me show you this. This was a command that Moses gave to the people. I wanted to initially start with chapter 11, but it was in my reading all that the different things that Moses was saying that we should not do, and how God would bless us if we was obedient. So I'm just going to skip all of that because you guys can read it in your own time. But this is, and here's the other thing. A lot of people don't even like to read this stuff because, we claim that we're under grace. We are under grace, but Jesus did not do away with the law. He fulfilled it. So there's things in here we need to be paying attention to. He fulfilled the law. We are under grace. But being under grace, Jesus himself said, and he's the word of God, right? He's the word, right? He said, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I tell you to do? Why is it that we don't know what it is that we're supposed to do? Because we won't even look at the Old Testament. We figure that we have nothing to do, and we take portions of, we take like the fact that they used to sacrifice animals back in the day, and we don't have to do that anymore. So because of that, because we don't have to do any of those sacrifices anymore, because Jesus was that sacrifice and he fulfilled that for us, so we don't have to do that. We think that we don't have to pay. And I'm going to keep going, and I'm not going to get distracted. What are we fighting? Do we really know? So this is Deuteronomy chapter 12. This is verse 8. It says, you are not to do as we do here today. Everyone as he sees fit. And that's what we're doing. We do as we see fit. So you have some, and I'm about to digress for a second. You have some who would hear the warnings today to not gather in gatherings more than 10 people, 10 or less. They're saying so that you can contain this thing, and yet we still do it. That's because we are doing everyone as we see fit. I mean, all day long, we're doing as we see fit. If these are warnings that we're being given, but we're not obeying. It says, again, this is Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 8. You are not to do as we do here today, everyone as he sees fit, since you have not yet reached the resting place and the inheritance the Lord your God is giving you. I'm going to go back and I'm going to stay focused on this. Jonah ran away. God told him to do something specific. He told him what to do, what to say, where to go. And he ran a whole different way. And let me tell you, he was so committed to doing his own thing that it says here, this is verse 3 of Jonah, chapter 1. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. After paying the fare, he was committed. Not only did he pay the fare, he went on board. He was real committed. He joined himself to them. He was real committed to doing what he wanted to do. So here's the result. Verse number 4. I want to make sure I didn't skip anything. It says he went in a different direction. He was committed to doing opposite of what God told him to do. He paid the fare. He got on board. He went told. Okay. So verse number 4, it says, then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea. Who sent it? The Lord. The devil didn't do it. This storm that came up was from the Lord. It says, then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent, I meant to write that down. Put that in my notes. Where is it? Violent. I'm gonna make sure, don't let me forget that word, violent. It says, and this is verse 4, Jonah chapter 1. And please, you guys, please look it up in your Bibles. If you don't have a hardback copy of your Bible, the Bibles is free on the internet. Pull it up. You got to see this. You got to read it for yourself and read it from your translations. I'm reading this from the New International Version because I like how it reads. It's easy to understand. I do have other translations here. I have a Dake's King James Version. I have a New American Bible. I have a Message Bible. And having access to Bible Gateway, I have all types of translations. So the translation I'm reading from right now is NIV. If that is not your preferred translation, is Jonah chapter 1. Please go get it and go look at this. Verse number 4. It says, then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. Now, I have been on a boat before. I'm not a boater. I can't swim. I don't know if I should be admitting that, but I can't swim. I like the water. I love the water, as a matter of fact. But I'm not one to get on a cruise ship and like go out and be days out, like out. I'm not going to do it. You can't make me. I don't care where you going. I ain't going. I need the dry land. The dry land. I love the water. I love to stand on the sand and look at the water. I put my feet along the edge, but yeah, I'm not going. But I mention all that because these people, Joppa, I did the background on them. And let me tell you about them. The people of Tarshish, where he was going, and the people of Joppa, they were, I'm going to start with Tarshish. The people of Tarshish is Noah's grandchildren. Noah's oldest son, Japheth, had a son named Tarshish. They are known, from Joppa to Tarshish, they are known as being maritimers. What a maritimer is a person who live on the sea, found near the sea, do trading on the sea. Them the ones that be on them boats. Them the ones that work on them boats. Them the ones that live off the sea. They might do some stuff on the land, but they love the sea. That's the maritimers. So these were people who were familiar with traveling that route. They were familiar with how to do boat. And the way our boats are today, I don't think that is how the boats were back then. I don't know, but I really doubt that, because of the technology that we have. So I want to show you something. I really want to show you this, and here's why. It says, this is verse number 4. Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. Now, I wanted to know. I'm one of them kids. I ask questions. God said we can ask him if we lack in wisdom and we don't know. He said ask, and he will show us great and unsearchable. So I wanted to know, right? And again, we have internet access where we could see all this stuff. So I wanted to know, what was it like on this boat for them? What was it like having to try to control this boat? And so I want to show y'all something. I'm going to show you right now. Let me turn this around. Okay, so this is my computer, and let me press play. I want y'all to watch this with me now. Remember, this was a violent storm. Y'all, I can't. Let me turn this down just a little bit. Wait a minute. I want to turn it down. There we go. Okay. So, look. Would y'all call that a violent storm that boat is in? Would y'all call that a violent storm? Look at that. I can't, y'all. That's why you ain't gonna find me on one of them cruise ships. But this is not a cruise ship. These here are not cruise ships. And I chose to look for a video that has ships like this. And again, I don't think that they had all this stuff going on in their ships back then. Because like our times now is we way more advanced than I think they were. I don't know what they were like back then. I never lived back then. We talking about in Jonah's day. But look at this, because I don't know what it is that we think when we read these scriptures. And I needed to see. I needed to understand. I needed to know, because I'm trying to, first of all, I already feel some type of way because I didn't go to church. And I feel some type of way like I was like, I wanted to go, but I wasn't going to go. I know, knowing what I knew, I just was not going to leave out and go. I was going to sit my behind here. And just like I'm sitting my behind here, I'm not leaving out to go to no store today either. So I needed to know. And like this morning, and trying to watch church online, and trying to, like, even those who are pastors who are friends of mine and enjoying what they were sharing. I had no intention to be here today with any of this. I honestly didn't. I honestly didn't. But I have to be obedient to God. And I need to share with you all, and with everything that God was pouring into me, I needed to share this with you all. This is important because God says, he said to Ezekiel, when I warn you, that's in Ezekiel chapter 3, when I warn you, and I tell you, as a matter of fact, let me not paraphrase it, let me just go and read it while you're watching this. I'll show y'all Ezekiel chapter 3, I'm turning to it. And keep in mind, this is what Jonah and them sellers, and we not done, we on Jonah chapter 1 verse 4. This is what you're looking, but Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 17, it says, Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. So hear the word I speak, and give them warning from me. When I say to a wicked man, you will surely die, and you do not warn him or speak out to dissuade him from his evil ways in order to save his life, that wicked man will die for his sin, and I will hold you accountable for his blood. But if you do warn the wicked man and he does not turn from his wickedness or from his evil ways, he will die for his sin, but you will have saved yourself. Again, when a righteous man turns from his righteousness and does evil, and I put a stumbling block before him. God said, first of all, he do it. He said, I'm going to read that again. This is verse 20, Ezekiel chapter 3. Again, when a righteous man turns from his righteousness and does evil, and I put a stumbling block before him, he will die. Since you did not warn him, he will die for his sin. The righteous things he did will not be remembered, and I will hold you accountable for his blood. Why? Because you didn't warn him. That was my little part right there. Verse 21 says, but if you do warn the righteous man not to sin, and he does not sin, he will surely live, because he took warning, and you will have saved yourself. So, yeah, I had no intention of being here. I did not expect to be here with any of this. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. I just can't. Y'all, I would have died. If I was on that boat, I would have felt faint out of fear. I would have died just out of fear. I could not have been on that. And this is why I won't even go on no cruises. I ain't trying to hear a friend call me chicken for that. I'm like, I'm just gonna be chicken because, yeah, that. So anyway, going back to Jonah. Let me fix this. Okay, so going back to Jonah and seeing, just getting a visual of. Okay, so I'm gonna let it keep playing. So just getting a visual of what it's like with these boats on this water. And you guys drive, we all drive, and y'all know what it's like driving and having to deal with other cars. You know, you have to be defensive driving, and that's cakewalk compared to dealing with these waters, and the instability of the ground. Y'all. It says, verse 4, then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea. Such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. Verse 5 says, all the sailors were afraid. These were maritimers. These were people who were skilled with shipping, skilled with maneuvering their boats on water. It says that they were all afraid, and they each cried out to his own God. Listen, they were all afraid, and they each cried out to his own God. And they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. That was something. We need to throw away something. Sometimes we need to throw away things. We need to throw away something. We need to release stuff. That's a humbling experience. That's an experience of letting go. That is a fasting experience. And it didn't get past me that this is what they did to lighten their ship. They begin to throw away cargo. All of us that's sitting around here on lockdown, for those of you who can't go to work, the kids is not in school, this is a great time to go through your house and begin to throw away stuff you don't need, stuff that you're not using, stuff that might have piled up, stuff that you had on your to-do list and hadn't been done. This is a great time to do that, to begin cleaning up, to begin lightening the load. But I'm going to keep going. It says, this is verse 5 still. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God, and they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. They threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah, the one who was doing his own thing, but Jonah. And that they all doing is they all releasing, they all getting rid of stuff. But Jonah, stubborn, hard-headed, not the world. Why is it that the worldly people, the world, why is, and because see, Jonah was the man of God, Jonah was the prophet of God, so why is it that these others knew that they needed to get rid of stuff, that they needed to throw stuff away? Why is it that they understood that? But Jonah, it says, but Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. He didn't help. Apparently he didn't care, because he went below deck and he went to sleep. Not just a light sleep, he went into a deep sleep, it says. But Jonah, he wasn't concerned. All of them is scared, afraid, crying out to their God. Jonah ain't do none of that. Verse number 6 says, the captain of the ship, now it goes down to Jonah. It says, the captain went to him and said, how can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us and we will not perish. I found that to be really important, because it took me to Psalm where it talked about God delivering. And y'all, I got in Psalm and I almost got stuck. Did I mark this in Jonah? I did. I got in Psalm and I almost got stuck. And I'm about to share this with y'all. Psalm, this is 107th Psalm. It says, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord say this. Y'all know how we say, let the redeemed of the Lord say so. So, God is good. His love endures forever. Verse 2, let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Those he redeemed from the hand of the foe. Those he gathered from the lands, from east and west and north and south. And then this is where I started marking stuff off in my Bible. I'm like, oh my gosh, so applicable. Verses 4 through 9 talks about going from a dry desert-like condition, how God would take you from that and put you in a place where you can settle down and just begin to enjoy life. Oh my gosh, listen, it says, and this is just verse 4 through 9. It says, some wandered in desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. The key was they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. And it says, and he delivered them from their distress. He led them by a straight way. He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for men. For he satisfies the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things. This is not just talking about physical food, you guys. This is talking about spiritual food. Have you ever been in a spiritually like dry place? Like you go to services, but you're really not getting anything out of it. It's like dry to you. It says again, they were hungry, and this is verse 5. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. In other words, they're just doing the same thing over and over. It's just another day. Their lives ebbed away. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. And he led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. God led them out of their dry place to a place where they could settle down. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love. Okay, so that was that part about being taken out of a dry desert-like condition into a place where you could settle down and just begin to bloom and flourish. Look at these next verses. This is verses 10 through 16. You guys, I'm telling you, this Psalm 107. Verse 10 through 16 deals with depression, deals with people in prison. That prison can be a mental prison. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical prison. Listen to what it say. It say, this is verse 10. Some sat in darkness and the deepest gloom, prisoners suffering in iron chains. Oh, listen to this part. Verse 11. For they had rebelled against the words of God. It tells you why. It tells you why this person sat, or these some sat in darkness and deepest gloom, prisoners suffering in iron chains, for they had rebelled against the word of God and despised the counsel of the Most High. So he subjected them to bitter labor. He said he did it. God's word say he did it. So he subjected them to bitter labor. They stumbled and there was no one to help. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble. They didn't cry to a friend. They didn't get on the phone and call nobody and say, okay, this is going on and woe is me. They didn't do nothing. It wasn't no pity party type of stuff. It says they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness. He brought them out of depression. He brought them out of their prison, whether it was a physical prison or a mental prison. I tell y'all, I know about this stuff. I know about this stuff firsthand. He brought them out of darkness and the deepest gloom and broke away their chains. Whom the Lord sets free is free indeed. Or it's whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Yes, it is. Verse 15, let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for men. For he breaks down gates of bronze and cuts through bars of iron. Yes, he does. This next one. And I'm telling y'all, I've experienced being in a dry place. My gosh, I've experienced that. And going from a dry place to a place that I feel like I could settle. You know, but let me tell y'all, if you settle in a place that you're not supposed to stop in, it's supposed to only be a pit stop, but you kind of get stationary there, he'll move you. And that, let me keep going. I've been through the depression and prison thing. So this is the next one. This is verses 17 through 22. This one talks about the problems that arise because of rebelliousness. It says in verse 17, some became fools through their rebellious ways. He's telling you why. He's telling you why these issues are happening, why this stuff happened, why it is that you depressed, or why you find yourself in some type of bondage or some type of prison because of being rebellious. It says some became fools through their rebellious ways and suffered affliction because of their iniquities. They loathed all food and drew near the gates of death. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble. He's telling you what to do. He's telling me what to do. It says, then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. Verse 20 says, he sent forth his word. And again, this is Psalm 107. He sent forth his word and healed them. He rescued them from the grave. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for men. Let them sacrifice thank offerings and tell of his works with songs of joy. Going back to verse 20, it says he sent forth his word and healed them. He sent forth his word and healed them. Why am I stuck there just for this quick second? Because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. He sends forth his word to heal us. But if we don't obey what we're being told to do, moving forward, verses 23 through 34 is the next section. Verse 23 through 32 is the next section. And that section deals with the ships. That's where, like, when I first was reading Jonah, and Jonah took me to Psalm 107. That's where I started, but I had to go back. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. And so that's why I just went back with y'all instead of like doubling myself. So verses 23 through 32 deals with the ships. Now, we just watched a bunch of ships going through some storms. But here's the deal. It's not necessarily a physical ship. It could be a relationship. It could be a friendship. And so now about to look at the issues that happens with ships. It says, others went out on the sea in ships. Now I'm going to stop right there just for a second. Y'all humor me just for a second. God's word gives us clues on everything. So in the book of Revelation, I should have marked this down at first, but I didn't even have it in my notes, and I'm gonna have to go back and make sure I write it in my notes. In the book of Revelation, when it was talking about Babylon the Great, and it talked about how she sat on many waters. The many waters were called seas. And when it was explained, when this verses was explained, the way it was explained was that the seas, the waters, I found it. Thank you, Lord. It's Revelation chapter 17, and it's verse number 15. It says, then, and this is John speaking, it says, then the angel said to me, the waters you saw, where the prostitute sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. That's why over here in Psalm, where it says others went out on the sea. Well, if the water is peoples and nations and languages, then these ships, because if they went out on the sea in ships, these ships would then be friendships and relationships. And if there's another type of ship out there, you guys tell me what that other ship is, or what any of the other ships is. But right now, the only thing I can think of is friendships and relationships. Because again, Revelation told us in chapter 17, verse 15, that the waters represented peoples and nations and tongues and languages. So back in Psalm 107:23, it says, others went out on the sea in ships. They were merchants on the mighty waters. Merchants, business owners maybe. Counselors, maybe, teachers. They were merchants on the mighty ships. On the mighty waters. They saw the works of the Lord. They saw the works of the Lord. That's verse 24. His wonderful deeds in the deep. For he spoke and stirred up a tempest that lifted high the waves. As a matter of fact, y'all, let me do it like this. There you go. Okay. It says, others went out on the sea. I'm starting at verse 23 again. In ships. They were merchants on the mighty waters. They saw the works of the Lord, his wonderful deeds in the deep. For he spoke and stirred up a tempest that lifted high the waves. They mounted. Ooh, look at that high wave. It says they mounted up to the heavens. You seen that? And they went down to the depths. In their peril, their courage melted away. They reeled and staggered like drunken men. They were at their wits' end. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper. The waves of the sea were hushed. They were glad when it grew calm, and he guided them to their desired haven. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for men. Let me turn this back around. Okay. And his wonderful deeds for men. Let them exalt him in the assembly of the people and praised him in the council of the elders. So again, these people who had issues in these ships, it said in verse 28, they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. They didn't call their friends. They didn't get on the phone and get to talking about people. They cried out to the Lord in their trouble. And it says, and he brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper, and the waves of the sea were hushed. They were glad when it grew calm, and he guided them to their desired haven. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for men. Let them exalt him in the assembly of the people and praise him in the council of the elders. Now, here in verse 33 and 34 of Psalm 103, I like those verses because God explains why. And that's one of the things we mentioned in Jonah, looking at Jonah, that first chapter, first verse, first couple of verses. God will let you know who, what, when, where, why, and how. So verse 33, Psalms 107, it says, he turned rivers into desert. It said he did it. He turned the rivers into desert, flowing springs into thirsty ground, and fruitful land into a salt waste. Why? Because of the wickedness of those who live there. Check out verses 35 through 38. I like those verses too, because it reminds us that God is in control. He's in control. So that river that he turned into a desert in verse 33, look at verse 35. It says, he turned the desert into pools of water and the parched ground into flowing springs. There he brought the hungry to live, and they founded a city where they could settle. They sowed fields and planted vineyards that yielded a fruitful harvest. He blessed them, and their numbers greatly increased. He did not let their herds diminish. Then their numbers decreased, and they were humbled. I started this with 2 Chronicles chapter 7. I first started with verse 13 because that is where God is literally saying he the one that's doing this. But it's in verse 14 where he tells us, if my people will call by my name, will humble themselves, right? So here in verse number 39 of Psalm 107, check this out. It says, then their numbers decreased and they were humbled. Check out how. By oppression, calamity, and sorrow. They were humbled by oppression, calamity, and sorrow. He who pours contempt on nobles made them wander in a trackless waste. But he lifted the needy out of their affliction and increased their families like flocks. The upright see and rejoice, but all the wicked shut their mouths. Whoever is wise, let him heed these things and consider the great love of the Lord. God is trying to get our attention. So if you go to look at this video, if you share the video, you will see that I entitled it, What Are We Fighting? Do we really know? God is trying to get our attention. We're going to go back to Jonah. I left off in verse number 6. Where the captain went to Jonah and asked him, like, what the heck you doing? Why you down here? Okay, I'm putting it in my own words. He said, how can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us and we will not perish. The captain, the leader of this boat, told Jonah, who went down in the bottom deck, the lower deck, to lay down and go to sleep. He told Jonah that because everybody else was praying and they was calling out because they was afraid for their lives. These are people. Jonah wasn't no boater. He was not a boater. I don't know what Jonah did. As a matter of fact, let me not get ahead of myself. Verse number 7. It says, then the sailors, the rest of the crew, they said to each other, come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this. They wanted to know who's doing this. Who is doing this? Who's responsible for this calamity? So they cast lots and the lot fell on Jonah. Let me tell you, God is going to reveal. He will reveal stuff. He will expose stuff. Yesterday, late last night, I posted this video that I had saw. And it was of a meeting that had went on here in Florida in one of the other counties. I live in Escambia County. So it was one of the other counties. And at this meeting, a couple of people who were doing this meeting got into an argument. And oh my gosh, the stuff that was being exposed in that argument is on my Facebook page. You go check it out. Let me tell y'all, God will expose some stuff. The stuff done in the dark will come to the light. We know the scripture says that. So in this case, they cast these lots and the lot fell on Jonah. God is in control. We read that in Psalm 107, that whether it's bad or whether it's good, God is in control. So the lot fell on Jonah. It's been exposed. Who? So now the sailors, they all go to Jonah. This is verse number 8. And they ask him, they say, tell us, you tell us, because the lot fell on him. Who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? Who? Remember I said that it's revealed who, what, when, where. It says, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are? They wanted to know a whole lot. Where you live? What's your social security number? What's your birthday? No, I'm just kidding. But they was asking a whole lot. Who is responsible? What do you do? What type of work do you do? This is where my notes is on this. What type of work do you do? I gotta share with this because I got my little notes what I wrote down. So it says God revealed. So the sailors asked Jonah, what do you do? Number 1, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? Today, we're quick to say when something goes wrong, that it's the devil. Again, that's why I had wrote down, do we even know for real, what it is we're fighting? We call it coronavirus, or we say that we're fighting the devil. We sing these songs, this means war. We do all this, but do we really know who we fighting? So so I wrote down here, today we're quick to say when something goes wrong, that it's the devil. Number 1, we don't take responsibility for what we do. Let's be honest. We don't take responsibility for what we do. Number 2, we prefer to place the blame on someone else. So instead of us humbling ourselves like God tells us to do when he brings stuff on us, he told us in Psalm 107 that this stuff is happening because of our rebelliousness. We don't take responsibility for what we do. We prefer to place the blame on somebody else. Or we glorify the devil by giving him credit for stuff that God clearly said he did. Let that sink in for a second. I'm going to say it again. We don't take responsibility for what we do. God told us to humble ourselves. He said when we see this stuff happening, to humble ourselves and pray and seek his, and turn around and seek his face. He told us what to do in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14. But we don't take responsibility. We prefer to place the blame on somebody else. Oh, hold on. Let me fix this. Come on, there we go. Okay, y'all. We back in business. So we prefer to place the blame on somebody else or something else. Well, I can't do this because of that, or I did this because you did that. Tit for tat. That's what we humans like to do. Hey, and look, we get it honestly. If we're going to tell the truth, we get it honestly. Because if you think about it, that's what Adam did. When Adam got called out about eating the fruit, Adam said to God, the woman that you gave me some of the fruit, and so I ate. So like, was he telling God that well, this happened to me because of what you did? I'm just saying. But let me stay focused now. Let me not digress too much. So we prefer to place the blame on somebody else that's inherited. And we glorify the devil by giving him credit. So this coronavirus stuff is going on. God say that when I send a plague on my people, God said in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 13, or when I send a plague on my people, when I send a plague, not on them, but on my people. That's what God said. That's what God said. And yet, here we are, God's people, and we're saying the devil did it. Devil, you a liar. This coronavirus is not going to attack me. You're a liar. So we glorifying him in our honesty when we do that. Giving him credit for something that God did. Completely ignoring the warnings that God is sending. I was about to say to what? I'm going to say to wake up, to pay attention, to take note. It's like, do you know somebody who is a deep sleeper, who's hard to wake up? Like you try to tap them, wake up. And they're like, wake up. And the person like brush your hand away, and you pull the cover off them, and they pull the cover back on them, but they won't get up. They won't get up at all. That's how we do. That's how we do. When we don't stop, humble ourselves, pray to God, and seek his face. He said in James chapter 5, I'm digressing again. He said in James chapter 5, verse 13, is there any of you in trouble? Let him pray. He said in Psalm chapter 50, verse 15, call to me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you. He said in Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 3, call to me, and I will answer you, and show you great and unsearchable things you do not know. But we don't pay attention. We brush it off. So they asked, again, this is verse 7, Jonah chapter 1, verse 7. The sailors said to each other, verse 8. They asked him, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? They wanted to know. They asked him, what do you do? What is your work? What is your profession? What is your trade? Who are you? What do you do? Where do you come from? How did you get here? Where's your country? Where do you live? From what people are you? Who's your family? Who's your family? They wanted to know. And finally, we get to verse 9 where Jonah responds, I am a Hebrew and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land. Finally, he spoke up. It says in verse 10, this terrified them. And they asked, what have you done? They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so. That's what verse 10 say. Verse 11 says, the sea, remember we had read that the sea was violent. And I showed you pictures of that. The sea was violent. Verse 11 says the sea was getting rougher and rougher. Sort of like this coronavirus. It started off with everybody watching it and seeing what was going on over there in China. And then it started getting rougher and rougher. It started spreading out. So they asked him, what should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us? Jonah told them what to do. He said, pick me up in verse 12. Pick me up and throw me into the sea, he replied, and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. Jonah actually finally owned responsibility for everything that was going on. Pick me up, throw me into the sea, and it will become calm. I know that it was my fault. I know. Y'all, we know what we do. We know the areas we're in. We're not being obedient to God. We know. We know. We know. We could try to justify it all day. But God's word said that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We know. I know where I'm hard-headed and stubborn, and we know. Jonah finally owned it. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. But let me show y'all typical human nature. Verse 13 says, instead. Typical. Told what to do. These sailors was told what to do. And what did they do? They did something totally opposite. It says instead of doing what they was told to do, instead, the men did their best to row back to land. So instead of doing what they were supposed to do, what they were told to do, they asked, and God gave them the answer. They was calling out to their gods now. But God honored them to answer them, to show them who was responsible for the calamity, to reveal it. They were able to confront the issue. And in confronting the issue and being made aware of what was going on, being told what to do, pick me up, throw me into the sea, and it'll become calm. Get rid of it, release it, let go, humble yourself, fast. But instead of doing that, it says instead, they did their best to row back to land. We are some hard-headed people because we do the same thing. We do the same thing. We do something different than what we're told to do, and therefore we continue to suffer, because it says in verse 13, but they could not. They tried to row back to land, but they could not. And it says, the sea grew even wilder than before. So we started off with a violent sea. Let me show you. We started off with a violent sea. And then we're told in verse 11 that the sea got rougher and rougher. And now we're being told in verse 13, again, because of hard-headedness, because of people doing what they want to do instead of doing what they're told to do in answer to their prayers, the sea gets wilder, even wilder than before. That's what it said. The sea grew even wilder than before, to the point that they now cry out to the Lord. This is verse 14. Then they cried out to the Lord, "O Lord, please do not let us die for taking this man's life." Now they ready to do what they told to do, what they were told to do. But they understand too that there's an accountability with this, because they can ready to throw him overboard. And they really didn't want to do that. It says, "Please do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man. For you, O Lord, have done as you pleased." Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. There's a purpose in the storm. And here's the purpose. It says in verse 16, at this the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. In that experience, these men came to know God Almighty, the Lord, as the only true God. And they began to fear him. They made sacrifices to him, offered sacrifices to him, and made vows to him. Their hearts was turned to the Lord. There's a purpose in all of this. People, in everything that's going on now, people are crying out. They're praying. They're seeking the Lord. They're calling out for answers. There's a purpose in all of this. Sadly, though, it took disobedience to, look, I laugh to keep from crying, y'all. I laugh to keep from crying. Sadly, it took disobedience to get us to this point. Hopefully, you're catching the message in all of this. We need to stop, as far as us, as far as the believers, we need to stop doing what it is that we want to do. We need to start being obedient. Again, Jesus said, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? That's Luke chapter 6, verse 46. I think 46. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I tell you to do? In Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 through 23, I think it is, Jesus said, many would say in that day, Lord, Lord. But I tell them to get away from me. I don't like paraphrasing, so I'm about to go read it. It says, not everyone, here we go. Matthew chapter 7, verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Only he. So he's telling us who will. Only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many would say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons and perform many miracles? Now these will be, those who's doing that, these will be people who consider themselves to be worshipers and believers and religious. However, he said though, then I would tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Wow. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of the heavens, but only he who does the will of my Father. It is important that we are obedient, you guys, that we stop trying to justify stuff, stop doing our own thing. That's what Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 8 tell us, to stop doing our own thing. We need to not be doing our own thing. We need to find out what God's will is, and we need to do that. And it's not hard to do. You got the word, read it. We need to read it, and we need to be obedient to it. But that's not all. So now here's the next thing. So, and I love, let me tell y'all, I love how God does it. He don't just check the world, he check us too. And as a matter of fact, God said that he will start with his house first. He will correct his house first, even before he goes to everybody else. So going back to Jonah, I'm going to skip past chapter 2 and I'm going to go straight to chapter 3. Because this is the reason, it's chapter 3 that is the reason why I am actually here doing this live video. So, here we go. Jonah chapter 3. Verse 1, it says, then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. God is a God of second chances. But understand, he don't just give second chances. He give third chances and fourth chances and fifth chances. And why do I say so? Because God's word at Proverbs chapter 24, verse 16 says that the righteous will fall 7 times and he'll get back up. We don't get up on our own. God helps us. When we cry out to the Lord, he helps us. So, and then there's a scripture that says he's married to the backslider. I got to go find where that is, though. I don't know that one offhand, but y'all know, you read it. So he's a God of second chances, and we see that here in Jonah chapter 3, verse 1. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time, and again God told Jonah what to say, where to go say it at. He said, what to do? Go. That was the first thing. Go. Where? To the great city. Who? What city? It's a whole bunch of cities. What city? Nineveh. It says, go to the great city of Nineveh. He tells him what to do and what to say, and he tells him how. He says, proclaim to it the message I give you. Proclaim. That means to announce officially and publicly. So therefore, because this is a message that is being proclaimed, I decided to do a live video, and I'm like feeling some type of uncomfortable right now. I was okay a few minutes ago, but I'm feeling some type of uncomfortable right now. I don't know why, but he said to proclaim this message to them, the message that he was giving him. So God told Jonah what to say. And this time around, Jonah obeyed. Verse 3, it says, Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now, Nineveh was a very important city. A visit required 3 days. Verse 4 says, on the first day, Jonah started into the city. He proclaimed. Remember, that's to announce officially and publicly. And what he proclaimed was the message that the Lord gave him. This is what he said. This is verse 4, Jonah chapter 3. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overturned. 40 more days. He told them when. Now, I want to make sure that you guys are catching this. First of all, God told Jonah what to say. So Jonah was not doing his own thing anymore. After that experience he just had on that boat, he wasn't doing his own thing anymore. God told Jonah when things would happen. And that's what Jonah told the Ninevites. 40 more days. I want y'all to catch this. God told Noah when the flood was going to come. God told Noah in chapter 7. As a matter of fact, Genesis chapter 7. You got to see this. You got to catch this. He told Noah exactly when it was going to happen. I'm turning my Bible right now. Genesis chapter 7, I'm going to look at verse 1, verse 4, and verse 10. In verse 1, it says, then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Verse 4 says 7 days from now. Did you catch that? 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. And I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. He told them when. He told them what was going to happen. He told them how it was going to happen. Verse 10 says, and after the 7 days, the flood waters came on the earth. Please catch that. God told Noah the exact time in just 7 days more. God told Jonah what to tell the Ninevites. 40 more days. In Amos chapter 3 verse 7, it tells us that God would not do anything without letting his servants, the prophets, know. Now, the reason that it's important that you catch this is because of what's said in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36 to 39. And I'm about to turn there because we hear this preached all the time. And it's in God's word, so it's true. And Jesus said it, so it's true. But there's more to it. It says, Jesus said, this is his words. It says, no one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah. And there's your, that's what we need to catch. verse 37. That's the part. Let me go back to 36 because I really don't want y'all to miss this. No one knows about the day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Let's stop there because that's where everybody stops. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows, right? Jesus said so. Nobody knows. For 100 years, Noah didn't even know. He was building and working on his ark. He was growing the food that needed to be grown. He was storing up stuff, gathering stuff. You know, he was doing what God told him to do. He did not know when. For 100 years, he did not know when, because trust and believe, if he known, he probably would have told. He didn't know. He didn't know. Jesus said, no one knows about the day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son. Now, here's verse number 37. It says, but only the Father. Now, here's verse number 37. And this is the part that is missed when that word is preached. As it was in the days of Noah. Bam, we can stop right there. As it was in the days of Noah. So that sends you back to Noah. And it sends you back to chapter number 7. And God told Noah when ahead of time. He told Noah 7 days before it was time to go to get on that ark. He said, because in just 7 days more, that was verse number 4. And in verse number 4, he told him what was going to happen. And then in verse number 10, we seen that it happened just as God told him. In the book of Jonah, in chapter 3, Jonah was told when? 40 days more. 40 days more. So, and then God tells us in Amos that he's not going to do a thing without first letting his servants know. So I'm telling you guys, whenever anything is getting ready to go down, we are going to know ahead of time. We're going to know. We're going to know. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. That's what God's words say. No weapon formed against you. Formed, the fact that it was formed, it means that that stuff is going to happen, but it's not going to prosper. It's not. Why? Because God got us. Now, his word that goes forth from his mouth will not return to him void, right? He is the same yesterday, today, and forever, right? So if yesterday he let Noah know, and Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. We are going to know. I'm excited. We're going to know. 36, verse 36 says, no one knows about the day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. But then in verse number 37, Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. We're going to know ahead of time. We're going to know. And we're going to know. Just, it is what it is. God's word said it. I believe it. We're going to know. For in the days before the flood, this is verse 38, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, just like today. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That's how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. Some people, it's going to be a whole bunch of people that's going to get caught. It's going to be a whole bunch of people that's going to get caught because they're not paying attention to the warnings. So the question is, are we going to obey? Are we going to obey the warnings? Now, we are probably quick to say yeah. I probably would have been quick to say yeah, but I have to... and I had to, if you look at my post yesterday, I had to honor and own, not honor, but I have to own the fact, just like Jonah had to own his own stuff when he told them, I know it's my fault. So I had to own the fact that I'm hard-headed and stubborn too. So, like all last week, about to tell on myself, all last week, every day I was in the store. 2 or 3 stores. I go from one store to the other. Every single day. I'm not hurting for nothing. I don't need nothing. But every single day I was at the store. I forget this. And I need to go get this. Or I see this and I need to go get that. Today, I'm sitting home. I'm not going nowhere. I promise y'all I'm not going nowhere. If I leave out the house, I'm going to go in the front and rake up some leaves or go in the backyard, which I don't like going in the backyard, and help Jerry out in the backyard. I'm not going nowhere today. I promise you, I'm not going nowhere today. And that's one of the reasons too why being obedient That's one of the reasons why I did not go to church today. I'm telling y'all just don't, you have no idea how difficult that was for me. And I said, even though that I'm not going, I'm going to get up and I'm going to get dressed as if I'm going. The only thing I didn't do is put on my jewelry, and I meant to do that. But, you just don't know how difficult that was for me. And I literally had to sit before the Lord on this. And sit before the Lord about what I was reading in the scriptures, because I asked the Lord. God tells us if there is trouble, if any one of you are in trouble, to ask him to pray. Let him pray. And so for me, that was trouble. Trouble means that there's a problem that is not welcome, or you cannot understand something. There's a difficulty in understanding something. And I had a difficulty in understanding. And it was a problem that to me was not welcome. You tell me that I can't go to church. Hold on, wait a minute. So I needed to understand this. And so I sat before the Lord, and it took me to Romans chapter 13, verse 1 through 4, where it speaks of how all superior authorities are placed in their positions by God. And to take a stand against a superior authority is to take a stand against God. Okay, I understand that. But then you have Acts chapter 5, I think it's verse 29, where the Apostle Peter told the superior authorities, we must obey God as ruler rather than man. And they did not do what the superior authorities were telling them to do. And I'm like, this is a contradiction. I'm like, help me understand this. And God did. He had made me look at that account in Acts again. And what I realized is the reason why they took that stand. They took that stand then because the superior authorities was trying to tell them to stop preaching about Jesus. And that would have been in direct violation of what Jesus told them to do when Jesus told them to go therefore and make disciples of all the nations and teach them to obey the So I had to then sit and look at what's happening today. And this stuff that's going on today is not about religion. The religious community is not under attack. The world is under attack with a virus. And the religious community is not being told you can't meet, you can't talk about. That's not what's happening. The world is being asked, well, deal with the government here, but I say the world because everybody is affected. Everybody, every country has been affected by this. But the government has been asking, first they said gatherings of no more than 150. And then they took it down. And then they took it down some more. And then in some places, some states are literally on shut-ins. We're not on a shut-in here. Unless somebody self-imposes a shut-in for themselves. But we're not on a shut-in here. But they have asked here that you don't gather in more than 10 people. And the reason why is because as they're trying to understand this germ that's going through, this virus that's going through, and try to contain it and keep it from spreading, that's why they're doing it. So therefore, at this point in time, to disobey a government order which is sent for our protection is to take a stand against God. And I had to understand, and I had to literally sit. This is Romans chapter 13, verse 1. Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, verse 2. Consequently, he who rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. That's Romans chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. I turned back over to Psalm 107 for a second to reread verse 17. Some became fools through their rebellious ways and suffered affliction because of their iniquity. We know the word iniquity means sin. They loathed all food and drew near the gates of death. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He sent forth his word and healed them. He rescued them from the grave. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love, for his wonderful deeds. Let them sacrifice thank offerings and tell of his works with songs of joy. Romans 13 is real clear. To rebel against governmental authorities is to rebel against God. That could have been me this morning had I not seen yesterday a post of something that happened in Kentucky at a church service where they were ordered an order sent down from the governor, and it's on my page, you'll be able to see that, to not meet. And this church decided that they was not going to do that and that they were going to meet. And their doors being open, you can't control who comes in. Their doors being open, a visitor came in, and now that visitor has coronavirus, the COVID, or tested positive for COVID-19. It says, verse 2, Romans 13:2. Consequently, he who rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. So, I sat my little happy behind at home. And I'm going to be honest with you, it wasn't the services that I watched online that has made me okay with being at home today. It's this study that I ended up doing when the one service that I was trying, and maybe now, like when I want to go, because I want to hear what Pastor Jakes was saying, Bishop Jakes was saying. I want to hear that. I love how he preaches. And maybe now that I've done this study, I could go back and enjoy some of the other sermons that I have seen. But one more thing I got to show you before I go back to Revelation, because it's something that I have to say, and I know that I have to say, and then I can end this finally. It's like you know when God is letting you stop and when he's keeping you going. So this is Hebrews chapter 10, and it's verse number 26. This is another one that like Holy Spirit got me with yesterday to keep my behind home today. And in the house, even like we in the day now, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not even going out to go to no stores today either. I'm about to sit in the house. Hebrews chapter 10 verse 26 says, if we deliberately keep on sinning after we have received the knowledge of the truth. Let me pause. If we continue to group ourselves in groups larger than 10, because, and I'm not talking about for church, I'm talking about for anything, including me in these stores. If we continue to, or if we deliberately keep on sinning after we have received the knowledge of the truth, no sacrifice for sins is left, but only a fearful expectation of judgment and of raging fire that will consume the enemies of God. If I rebel, and I'm going to say me, I'm just going to keep it personal. If I rebel against God because I'm rebelling against superior authorities, then I'm apparently, if I'm reading this right, making myself an enemy of God. I ain't got time for that. My behind here in the house. My behind here in the house. But see, if this stuff ain't being broken down and this stuff isn't being taught, we don't realize we're doing that. God said his people die for lack of knowledge. We wouldn't even realize that we're doing that. I can be so zealous. I can be so zealous sometimes. You tell me I'm not going to church, baby, bye. I'm going to have some church. Even if I have to sit in my room, I'm gonna have some church. You ain't gonna tell me that I'm not gonna have no church. I could be very zealous, but I don't want to be zealous without discernment. And so I have been asking God, like all last week, to open my eyes, to help me to understand, help me to see. And I thank God that he's been doing that. I thank God that he's been doing it. I thank God that he really touched my heart to hear and get this. I'm going to finish up Jonah real quick and I'm going to go ahead and say what needs to be said. So Jonah, the backslider, Jonah, the one that has the Jonah gym shoes that run, and I don't have my Jonah gym shoes no more. God took them from me because I asked God to, because I apparently couldn't get rid of them on my own. So I asked God like over a year ago to take my Jonah gym shoes, and I haven't picked them back up since. So when God tell me to do something, I do something now. I'm on that second, third, fourth, fifth chance. So anyway, Jonah went into the city. He did what God told him to do, and he began to proclaim 40 days more, and Nineveh will be overturned. Verse number 5, Jonah chapter 3. The Ninevites believed God. They declared a fast, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. I had been saying last week, when God revealed to me, because like I said earlier in that initial, when God was showing me Jonah, I thought he was telling me that I had an attitude against the Ninevites because of that 4th chapter of Jonah, but God had to back me up and show me, no, it wasn't about that. It was about the fact that we all need to be fasting. And so I started speaking, and when I caught that, I started speaking, well, what if the president of the United States, what if he, with all those press conferences that he's doing, what if he just up, and you know how the people, apparently from what I be seeing, the people be telling him what to say, and he go and he do his own thing and he say what he want to say. So what if on one of these press conferences he decides to go and they done told him what to say, and got him all brief, and he go and say what he want to say, but this is what he say. He tell everybody in the United States, go and fast, go pray to your God and fast. This ain't about religion. This ain't about denomination. This ain't about race. This ain't about none of that. Just go pray. You go pray to your God. You go pray to your God and you go fast. What if he told everybody to do that? I promise you, coronavirus will be stopped. It would stop just like that, because God is the one that, and so I've been saying this all last week, like around the end of last week when I finally caught it. But God just showed me something today. Jonah, when he went in to Nineveh and he began to proclaim, hold on, y'all. And he began to proclaim, which is to announce officially and publicly, which is what I'm doing, Facebook Live, officially and publicly proclaiming this, that in 40 days more, and Nineveh will be overturned. It says that the Ninevites believed God. And I had to look at this. I'm like, wait a minute. The Ninevites believed God. That's the people. They declared a fast. And all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. The people believed first. Because check out verse 6. When the news reached the king of Nineveh, when the news reached the president, they were already doing it. The people was already talking about this and getting ready to do this. But when the news reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne and called a press conference. I'm going to read it right. He rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. Then he issued a proclamation in Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, by the decree of the president and the Senate, and all the rest of the government workers. Do not let any man or beast, herd or flock taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God. I got to underline that. I'm going to say it again. Let everyone call urgently on God. Urgently. Urgently. This coronavirus is serious, right? So everybody has an urgency in reference to it, right? Let everyone call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? This is verse number 9. Who knows? God may relent. God may yet relent. And with compassion, turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. That was verse 9. I'm going to read that again. Who knows? God may yet relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. Verse 10. Jonah chapter 3. When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he had compassion and did not bring upon them the destruction he had threatened. I got corrected. I thought, and I was speaking and saying, the president needs to get online or on before them cameras like he do all the time every day. And regardless of what his, what they call it here, nobles have told him to say, which he don't pay attention to anyway. They tell him to do stuff and not to do stuff, and he do what he want to do. That's disobedient according to Deuteronomy chapter 12 verse 8. It says we shouldn't be doing that, but that's what he do. Is what it is. He needs to go and he needs to speak to everybody in the United States, and he needs to tell everybody, y'all, urgently call on God. Begin to fast and pray. Everybody. It needs to not be about religion. It needs to not be about denomination. None of that. You just go and you pray how you pray, but go and fast and pray. And I say that it needs to not be about denomination or religion because that's what Jonah tells us. The Ninevites was not related to the Hebrews in any way. In any way. They did not serve the only true God. But when they fasted and prayed like they knew how, I bet you this word say in verse 10 that when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he had compassion and did not bring upon them the destruction he had threatened. Those men, those sailors that was on that boat with Jonah, they all prayed to their own gods. That's what it says. Verse 5, chapter 1 of Jonah. All the sailors were afraid and each cried out to his own God. That's what it say. And they threw cargo into the ship, which is they fast. They started getting rid of stuff and to lighten the ship. And they was praying out to God to help them. And of course, God answered them, because when they cast the lots in verse 7 to find out who was responsible, it was revealed to them Jonah. So, and even when in verse number 13, even when they tried to not do what they was told to do to get rid of that issue that they was having, they tried to go the other way, they found out that they couldn't. And they prayed to God, they prayed to the Lord, and they took Jonah and they threw him overboard. Verse 15 tells us, and immediately the raging sea calmed down. Immediately it calmed down. Or it grew calm. It didn't immediately. It says it grew calm. It grew calm. So that wasn't immediate. It grew calm. But even still, it calmed down to the point that the men greatly feared. That's what it say, verse 16. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. So it wasn't a religious thing. It wasn't a denominational thing. These people fasted and prayed, and that's what God tells us to do. That's what he tells us to do. So because Jonah proclaimed it, and because the Ninevites, the people, heard it first, I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to step out, and I'm just going to say, to get rid of this thing, to stop this thing, this thing that's going through, we got to do what God. So I'm about to say, wow. I'm just going to pick up from right here. I don't know. I don't know what happened. But what I do know is just when I hit the very end of it, and just when I was getting ready to tell y'all what God's word saying, what God led me to, and all of a sudden my phone, the live just stopped. It just stopped. So, knowing who the scriptures say is the principality, the power of the air, I also know that God's word say that his word that goes forth from his mouth would not return to him void. And this that is supposed to be said is going to be said. Why have my phone? How it just stopped? Just out the blue, it just stopped. That's crazy. That's crazy. But it's about to be said, because it's about to be said. God's word said it. He said it. We need to be fasting and praying. And if it is not being said across these pulpits, I'm sorry. And look, here's the deal. I understand that not everybody understands fasting. I understand that. Not everybody understands fasting. But what we don't understand, God says to ask of him. In James, he tells us everything we need to know. Everything we need to know to deal with the stuff that we're facing. God tells us in his word. So, number 1, James chapter 5, verse 13. Is any one of you in trouble? He should pray. He should pray. That's what he tells us. James chapter 1, verse number 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God. Pray. We should pray. Ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. It will be, not might, not maybe, it will be given to him. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt. Because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by wind. That man should not think he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all he does. God tells us not to doubt. Not to doubt. We need to ask him. He tells us to pray. As a matter of fact, last one, and I'm done, because I'm telling you guys, and I'm not going to let it get past me that Jonah, when he spoke, when he did that proclamation, hey, Rev, when he did that proclamation, I'm not going to let it get past me that the Ninevites heard it first. And when it got to the king of Nineveh, he reacted too. So I understand today that we all need to hear this first. We need to start fasting and praying. We need to start doing that. And then maybe, just maybe, the president will hear it too and begin to say that. Maybe some of these leaders in these other countries will hear this message too and begin to tell their people, fast and pray. Start fasting and praying. And maybe, just maybe, we would not make this about religion and would not tell a person how to fast or how, because like me, I go all day without eating anything. It's what time is it right now? It is. No, that ain't the time. What time is it right now? 2:48. I haven't ate anything all day and I'm not even hungry right now. So we fast in different ways. There's different types of fasts in the Bible. And at the end of the day, God says if there's something that you don't understand when it comes to that, ask him. Ask God. Ask God. Don't ask man. He will tell you. God's word say that the Holy Spirit is our tutor. He leads us in all truth. The Holy Spirit will tell you. He will show you. He will make it plain if you ask him. Ask God. Ask God. Ask God. Ask God. Ask God. And don't doubt. Don't doubt. So, I believe that the answer for us today, as far as the stuff that we're dealing with, is found in the book of Jonah. I believe that that answer is we all need to humble ourselves before the Lord, which means we need to fast and we need to pray. As a matter of fact, Jesus himself said some things you can't get rid of except through prayer and fasting. Fasting. I believe that we need to fast and we need to pray. And I believe that when we do that, God will see us just like he did for Jonah, for the people of Nineveh. It says when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he had compassion and did not bring upon them the destruction he had threatened. In Psalm 107, every time, in each one of those instances that the people was going through, it says, then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. So I believe the Lord. I believe God's word. And I believe that I have done what God told me to do. I have shared this message, and I feel like I could get up from here now. And I can go about the rest of my day. And so I'm about to do that. And I thank everyone for joining in. I appreciate that. I do from my heart. I appreciate that you all paid attention. I don't know what happened with that other video. I hope that the other video did save. And if it did save, y'all share this if you believe it. And if you receive, if it ministered to you, share it. You know, I really do think that we all just as a whole need to fast and pray. All of us, everybody, not about religion, not about denominations, not about church, but about us as a